Have you ever felt that sharp sting when someone you care about suddenly goes silent? When her replies slow down, her energy fades, and you start wondering what went wrong? That quiet can feel louder than any argument. It's not just her silence, it's the storm it creates inside you. You replay every conversation, every text, trying to find the moment things changed. You question your worth. You start thinking maybe you weren't enough. But here's the truth. Her silence isn't a reflection of your value, it's a test of your strength. When a woman ignores you, she's not always rejecting you. Sometimes she's measuring how you react. Most people crumble under that pressure. They chase, they beg for attention, they try to fix something that doesn't need fixing. But in doing so, they hand over all their power. And once you give that away, it's almost impossible to get it back. This is where most men lose themselves. They think being ignored means they have to prove their worth, when in reality, it's a moment to show it. The way you respond when someone withdraws tells the world who you are. Are you controlled by emotion or guided by strength? Are you needy for validation or grounded in your own identity? Every time you react with desperation, you tell her, and yourself, that you don't believe you're enough without her attention. But when you respond with calm confidence and self-respect, you send a completely different message. You are complete, with or without her. The silence she gives you isn't punishment, it's opportunity. It's your chance to reset the balance, to rise above emotional dependency and rediscover your power, to prove to yourself that your peace doesn't depend on anyone else's presence. You see, ego thrives when it controls your reaction, but the moment you stop feeding it, the moment you stop chasing what runs, the ego starts to collapse, and that's how you destroy it. Not by fighting, not by arguing, not by trying to make her see your worth, but by embodying it so deeply that her ignorance can no longer affect you. You're not here to chase validation. You're here to become someone who attracts it effortlessly. When a woman ignores you, she expects you to fold. She expects you to seek her approval, to double text, to explain yourself. But when you don't, when you remain still, grounded and focused on your own path, you confuse the pattern. Her power fades, because now she sees something rare, a man who doesn't depend on attention to feel significant. That's when everything shifts. She starts to wonder what changed. Why didn't he react? Why isn't he trying anymore? And that curiosity, that confusion, it starts to chip away at her ego. But you don't do it for revenge. You do it because real strength is silent. Real confidence is quiet. And the moment you stop letting other people dictate your emotional state, you become unstoppable. So stay with me till the end of this video. Because what we're about to dive into next isn't just about relationships. It's about mastering yourself. You'll learn how to respond with power, how to rebuild your self-worth, and how to carry yourself in a way that no silence can break you again. This isn't about playing games, it's about transformation. And if you're ready to take your control back, you're exactly where you need to be. Silence is not the enemy, it's the mirror that reveals who you really are when no one is watching. When she ignores you, the world stops for a moment. The noise fades and all that remains is your own voice, your thoughts, your insecurities, your doubts. That's the moment most men fear, but that's also where growth begins. Because silence forces you to face yourself. It strips away the masks, the distractions, and shows you the raw truth of how much you rely on others to feel seen. You've been taught that love means constant attention, constant validation, that if she doesn't reply, something's wrong. But the truth is deeper. Attention isn't love, it's comfort. And sometimes comfort blinds you from realizing how strong you can be without it. When a woman ignores you, she unknowingly gives you the space to meet your strongest version. The version that doesn't beg, doesn't panic, doesn't shrink. The version that stands tall, breathes deep and says, "I am enough, even in silence." Psychology calls it emotional regulation, the ability to control your inner world regardless of what's happening around you. It's one of the most powerful traits a person can develop. Because emotional control isn't coldness, it's command. It means you no longer let temporary feelings dictate permanent decisions. You no longer text out of fear or speak out of frustration. You operate from intention, not reaction. And that single shift changes everything. When she pulls away, don't chase her energy. Redirect it. Take the focus off what you lost and place it on what you've ignored within yourself. Maybe it's your goals, your growth, your peace. Most people lose themselves in someone else's absence because they've forgotten who they were before that person arrived. But that's the moment to return home, to your own mind, your own mission. The best response to being ignored is elevation. Work harder, think clearer, become sharper. Let your silence speak the loudest. Understand this, people respect what they can't control. When you remain calm, composed, and emotionally steady, you shift from being predictable to being powerful. You show that you're not reacting to external validation. You're leading from internal strength. That's attractive. That's magnetic. That's how you create presence, even when you say nothing. There's a reason confident people are unforgettable. It's not because they talk louder or move faster. It's because they don't let rejection define them. They use every setback as a reminder of their independence. Every silence becomes a signal to grow stronger. Every distance becomes an opportunity to become unshakable. So if she ignores you, let her. Don't send paragraphs trying to explain yourself. Don't spiral into what ifs. Take that emotional energy and reinvest it into your evolution. Every ignored message, every unanswered call, it's just fuel. Fuel to become someone whose peace can't be stolen, whose worth can't be questioned, whose energy can't be manipulated. Because when you master silence, you master yourself. And once you master yourself, no one, not even the person who once had all your attention, can take that control away again. That's how real confidence is built, quietly, patiently, in the spaces where others would break but you rise. Every time you feel ignored, your mind starts creating stories. You tell yourself she's lost interest. You imagine her giving her attention to someone else. You convince yourself you've done something wrong. That's not truth. That's fear speaking. Fear builds illusions. It makes you chase closure in places that no longer deserve your energy. But strength is found in silence, not in chasing answers. You don't need to understand why she's pulling away. You need to understand why you're so desperate to pull her back. Because that's where real power lives, inside the questions you've avoided asking yourself. When someone's absence shakes you, it's because you tied your worth to their presence. You gave someone the keys to your emotional peace. And when they walked away, they took that peace with them. But you can take it back by untangling your identity from their approval. The most dangerous addiction in the world isn't drugs or money, it's emotional validation. That constant craving to be noticed, liked, and chosen. It's invisible, but it controls millions of people every single day. The cure isn't attention. The cure is awareness. The moment you realize your self-worth isn't dependent on anyone else's recognition, you become emotionally free. When a woman ignores you, it's easy to fall into the trap of proving yourself. You want her to see what she's missing, to feel the loss she created. But that energy keeps you chained to her power. True strength isn't about proving, it's about becoming. You don't need to convince anyone that you matter. You show it through the way you carry yourself when they stop looking. Confidence isn't a show, it's a frequency. And when you start operating on that frequency, you no longer need validation. It starts finding you naturally. Psychologists call it self-concept, the image you hold of yourself in your mind. It's built by the thoughts you repeat, the boundaries you set, and the standards you keep. When someone ignores you, they're testing your self-concept. They're showing you whether your peace depends on external response or internal belief. Every ignored text is an invitation to choose strength over impulse, to prove to yourself that you no longer chase what doesn't serve your growth. Here's the truth: no one can destroy your ego if you stop feeding it. Ego thrives on reaction. It wants to be seen, to be validated, to feel in control. But when you detach from that need, your silence becomes more powerful than any response. Because silence isn't weakness, it's emotional discipline. And discipline is the foundation of every powerful person you've ever admired. You don't destroy her ego by ignoring her back. You destroy it by no longer needing to. You destroy it by elevating yourself to a place where her attention no longer defines your happiness. That's when she notices. Not because you're trying to make her, but because strength always commands awareness. The calm confidence of a man who knows his value doesn't need noise, it radiates. So the next time you feel ignored, don't fight it. Let it refine you. Let it build your emotional muscles. Because every moment of silence is shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and harder to shake. This isn't about her anymore. It's about you becoming the kind of person who no longer fears losing attention. Because once you reach that level of peace, you stop chasing people and start attracting respect. When someone pulls away, the natural instinct is to fill the space they leave behind. You want to reach out, to remind them of your presence, to fix what feels broken. But what if that silence isn't something to fix? What if it's something to learn from? When she ignores you, the universe is giving you a lesson in emotional independence, a test of whether you'll collapse into need or rise into power. Most people fail because they can't stand emptiness. They rush to replace it. They look for distractions, validation, or quick answers. But emptiness is sacred. It's the only space where transformation begins. The human mind craves control. You want to know where you stand, what she feels, what will happen next. But that desire for control often creates suffering. The truth is, you don't need certainty to feel peace. You need faith in yourself. Confidence is not knowing what will happen. It's knowing you'll be fine no matter what happens. The moment you understand that, you become free. You stop fighting the silence and start mastering it. You stop needing to be chosen and start choosing yourself. When she ignores you, it's easy to assume the problem is you. But sometimes her silence isn't rejection, it's reflection. People act from their own insecurities, fears, and defenses. Sometimes her distance has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with her own confusion. But even if it is rejection, it still doesn't define you. Because rejection isn't loss, it's redirection. It's life's way of guiding you back to yourself. The most powerful men are not those who avoid rejection, but those who are unshaken by it. They see it, feel it, and still move forward with the same quiet strength. Emotional maturity is realizing that not everyone will value you the way you deserve, and that's okay. You can't force connection, but you can protect your peace. You can't make someone see your worth, but you can refuse to lower your value just to be seen. The moment you choose inner peace over external approval, you start operating from power, not pain. That's when your energy shifts. That's when you stop needing her to respond. Because now you're responding to yourself, with discipline, focus, and self-respect. There's something magnetic about restraint. When you don't react, when you don't beg, when you simply move forward, people feel it. It creates curiosity. It breaks patterns. It shows depth. Not because you're playing games, but because you're guided by self-control. You've evolved beyond emotional dependency. That's what makes silence powerful. It exposes emotional maturity. You become dangerous the moment you stop being desperate. You become magnetic the moment you stop explaining your worth. You become unforgettable the moment you stop chasing attention and start commanding it through presence. Presence doesn't need words. It doesn't need validation. It's built through calm confidence, through the way you hold yourself, even when ignored. So if she's ignoring you now, remember this. It's not the end. It's the awakening. It's life testing your strength before granting you the peace you've been searching for. You're not losing anything by walking away from silence. You're gaining everything by walking back into yourself. Because the moment you realize your value doesn't need to be seen to exist, you've already won. Silence has a way of revealing truth. It shows who you are when no one is validating you, when no one is clapping, when no one is giving you attention. That's when your real foundation is tested. Most people only feel confident when they're being admired, but that's not confidence. That's dependency wearing a disguise. Real strength isn't built when people notice you, it's built when they don't. When you're alone, ignored, and unseen, and yet you still hold your head high, that's when self-worth becomes unshakable. When she ignores you, it's easy to let ego take over. You start thinking, how could she not see my value? You feel anger, confusion, and disappointment, all blending into one heavy emotion. But remember, ego always wants reaction. It wants to prove, to fight, to be right. It feeds on external validation. The problem is, ego doesn't heal, it hides. It protects you from feeling pain, but it also blocks you from growing through it. If you can learn to sit with that discomfort instead of escaping it, something incredible happens. You stop needing to protect your pride and start learning how to protect your peace. Growth begins the moment you stop asking, why is she ignoring me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? Because every emotional trigger is a teacher in disguise. Maybe it's showing you how attached you've become. Maybe it's reminding you that your boundaries have weakened. Or maybe it's simply pushing you to evolve into someone who no longer needs approval to feel secure. Pain always has purpose if you're willing to look beneath the surface. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It means you give space for clarity. You let go of trying to control outcomes and instead focus on controlling your response. That's emotional intelligence. The ability to remain composed, centered, and calm, no matter what storm unfolds around you. When she withdraws and you stay grounded, you send a message, not to her, but to yourself. That you've outgrown the need to be chosen. You choose yourself now. And that's what destroys her ego. Not arrogance, not revenge, but indifference. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't seek to hurt, doesn't seek to prove, doesn't seek to win. It simply doesn't need to play the game anymore. You're not trying to make her feel regret. You're just walking in such peace that her absence no longer disturbs your rhythm. That's power, the type that can't be faked, can't be forced, and can't be ignored. When a man reaches that level of self-control, he becomes magnetic, because energy doesn't lie. Women feel it. People feel it. The world feels it. The moment you stop trying to prove you're valuable and start embodying that value, everything changes. You walk differently. You speak differently. You attract differently. You stop chasing, and things start aligning, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you've learned the highest form of self-respect, peace over reaction. So when silence enters your life, don't run from it. Sit with it. Let it refine you. Because every second you resist the urge to chase, you're strengthening your emotional muscles. You're teaching yourself that your peace is priceless. You're learning that power isn't loud, it's quiet. And the more you master that quiet, the less anyone's behavior can control you. That's how you turn being ignored into transformation. By choosing stillness over chaos, growth over ego, and dignity over desperation. The greatest power you will ever hold is emotional detachment, the ability to stay centered while everything around you shifts. When she ignores you, she's expecting a reaction. She expects you to question yourself, to reach out, to lose control. That's what feeds her sense of superiority. But when you do the opposite, when you stay composed, calm, and collected, you interrupt the pattern. You stop feeding the dynamic that once kept her ego alive, because nothing disarms the manipulative power of silence more effectively than peace. Peace isn't passive, it's strength under control. It's the quiet confidence of a man who refuses to let temporary emotions ruin permanent self-respect. Most people confuse stillness with weakness, but stillness is strategy. It's where you process, reflect, and recalibrate. The man who doesn't rush to react always wins because he moves with intention, not impulse. That's what emotional mastery looks like. Not the absence of feelings, but the discipline to direct them. When a woman ignores you, your reaction defines you more than her decision. If you react out of panic, you reinforce her belief that she controls the dynamic. But if you respond with maturity and composure, you shift the power back to yourself. That shift doesn't need to be loud. Subtle. It's in your posture, your silence, your unwavering focus on growth. Because the man who no longer seeks attention becomes the one who naturally commands it. The real battle is internal. It's not about her words or her actions, it's about how you interpret them. Your mind can turn silence into rejection or reflection. It can build self-pity or self-awareness. The choice determines who you become. Every ignored message is a mirror showing how much control your emotions have over you, and if you can look at that reflection and choose calm over chaos, logic over impulse, and self-worth over reaction, you're already winning. Psychologists call this emotional resilience, the ability to recover from discomfort without losing balance. It's not built through comfort, it's built through moments like these. When someone tests your patience, your ego, your confidence, that's your training ground. Every time you resist the urge to react, you strengthen the muscle of discipline. That's how you become unshakable. When you learn to stay calm in silence, something profound happens. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of her behavior. You start seeing yourself as the observer of it. You stop asking, why is she doing this? And start asking, what does my response say about me? That's emotional maturity, the moment you stop blaming and start building. You begin to see that every situation, no matter how painful, is a chance to grow in mastery and self-command. The man who can remain composed when ignored is not cold, he's aware. He knows that chasing attention never creates respect. He knows that validation from others means nothing if it costs inner peace. That's what separates the strong from the desperate, the understanding that presence speaks louder than pressure. So let her silence echo. Let it test you. Let it refine you. Because the more you resist the temptation to react, the more powerful you become. Power doesn't come from control over others. It comes from control over yourself. When you no longer depend on someone else's response to feel complete, you reach a level of confidence that no rejection can touch. That's when her silence loses meaning, and your peace becomes your loudest statement. The moment you stop reacting, you shift from being emotionally controlled to being emotionally in control. Most people never reach that level because they live in constant reaction. They let external situations dictate their inner world. But peace belongs to those who've learned the art of emotional distance, the strength to feel deeply without being ruled by feelings. When she ignores you, it's not your job to prove your worth. It's your opportunity to show emotional independence. Because the truth is, the one who stays calm when others expect chaos is always the one in power. People confuse attention with importance, but they are not the same. Someone's silence doesn't mean you've lost your value. It only means they've lost access to it. Your presence, your time, your energy, they are privileges, not guarantees. And when someone decides to withdraw from them, it's not your responsibility to chase. It's your responsibility to protect what makes you powerful. Your peace, your focus, your self-respect. That's the difference between a man who reacts and a man who leads. When you stop chasing, something beautiful happens. You create space, and in that space, truth becomes clear. You begin to see who genuinely values your energy and who only feeds off your attention. You begin to realize that you never needed closure from anyone. You only needed clarity within yourself. And that clarity grows when you stop trying to convince people to stay and start trusting that those meant for you will never need persuasion. Your silence, when it comes from strength, is louder than any argument. It speaks of discipline. It speaks of control. It tells the world that you don't need validation to move forward. And when a woman sees that kind of strength, it challenges her ego because she realizes she can't manipulate your emotions. You've broken the invisible chain that most people never escape, the need to be noticed to feel significant. The truth is, you don't destroy someone's ego by playing games. You destroy it by rising above the need to. You destroy it by refusing to lower your vibration just to prove a point. You destroy it by keeping your dignity, your focus, and your calm, while others expect you to crumble. Because real confidence is silent. Real confidence doesn't announce itself. It simply exists, steady and unmoved. That's what makes it powerful. It doesn't need to be proven. The way you respond when you're ignored says more about your character than any words you could ever speak. Weak men react emotionally, trying to force attention. Strong men respond logically, focusing on self-growth. Unshakable men don't respond at all, they evolve. They channel rejection into progress. They build themselves so completely that being ignored no longer stings. It simply reveals who was never meant to matter. The most magnetic energy you can carry is peace. Not the peace that comes from getting what you want, but the peace that stays even when you don't. The peace that says, I'm good either way. Because when you truly reach that state, you become untouchable. You can lose people, moments, opportunities, but you'll never lose yourself. And that is how you win. That is how you reclaim control. Not by fighting for attention, but by mastering the silence that once made you doubt your own worth. Most people never truly see how close they are to change, because they keep waiting for something outside of them to move first. They wait for the world to open its doors before they decide to knock. They wait for signs, permission, perfect timing. And in that waiting, they lose years of potential. But real growth begins the moment you stop waiting and start acting, even when your hands are trembling and your mind is full of doubts. The courage to move despite fear is what separates those who evolve from those who remain trapped in their own hesitation. Every time you take a step forward in uncertainty, you rewrite your story. You stop being the victim of circumstance and become the author of your own transformation. There is power in doing things scared. There is power in showing up messy, unprepared, unsure, because growth never asks for perfection, it only asks for presence. The strength you admire in others was never born from confidence, it was forged through discomfort. Every master was once a beginner who chose to keep going, when no one believed in them, not even themselves. You cannot wait for belief to come from outside. You must manufacture it from within. Belief grows in the soil of repetition. Every small victory, every quiet effort, every invisible moment of discipline feeds it until it becomes unshakable. You have to realize that transformation doesn't happen in loud, cinematic moments. It happens in silence, in the decisions you make when no one is watching, when you choose to get up one more time, when you refuse to let the darkness define you, when you hold on to hope even when your heart feels heavy with exhaustion. That is where strength is built. In the unseen battles you fight daily against your own mind. You are not weak because you struggle. You are strong because you continue despite the struggle. That's the quiet kind of bravery the world rarely celebrates but deeply respects. It's easy to say someday. It's harder to say today. But only one of those choices will change your life. Every day you postpone your growth, you give your fears more time to root themselves deeper into your thoughts. You feed the narrative that you're not ready, and the longer you feed it, the stronger it becomes. The only way to break free is to act before you feel ready. Readiness is not a feeling, it's a result of doing. Every time you act, you teach your mind a new truth, that you can, that you are capable, that you are more than your hesitation. The moment you start moving, everything shifts. The fear doesn't vanish, but it starts losing control. You begin to see glimpses of strength you never knew you had. You realize that the pain of growth is far lighter than the pain of regret, that the discomfort of change is temporary, but the pride of transformation is permanent. And slowly, piece by piece, you become someone you once thought was impossible to be. Not because the world changed, but because you finally did. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize that no one is coming to save them. No one is coming to hand them confidence, to erase their pain, to push them toward greatness. That realization can feel heavy, but it's also the beginning of freedom. Because once you understand that it's all in your hands, you stop waiting for a rescue and start building your own strength. You stop asking for the storm to pass and start learning how to walk through it. The truth is, you have always had what you needed. You just doubted it because it didn't come with applause or recognition. But greatness doesn't announce itself, it grows quietly in the background of persistence. You become unstoppable the moment you decide that your emotions no longer dictate your effort. The days you don't feel like showing up are the most important ones. They test your commitment to yourself. It's easy to be consistent when you're inspired, but transformation begins when you continue even when the fire fades. That's when you build mental endurance, the kind that doesn't break under pressure. Every time you push through resistance, you prove to yourself that discipline is stronger than doubt. You stop being controlled by temporary feelings and start living by permanent values. The mind will always look for an escape, a reason to quit, a story to explain why it's not worth trying. But the mind can be trained. You can rewire it by feeding it evidence of your resilience. Every small win counts. Every day you showed up despite fear. Every challenge you survived. Every tear you turned into effort. Your brain remembers. It builds a library of proof that you are capable. And with each act of courage, that library expands until doubt no longer has room to speak. You don't silence fear by arguing with it, you silence it by acting anyway. The world doesn't change when you wish for it. It changes when you move with conviction. The difference between those who dream and those who rise lies in one thing: consistency. The dreamers talk about what they'll do. The doers quietly create evidence of what they've done. They don't wait for motivation, they generate it. They understand that action births clarity, and clarity births confidence. Momentum is built, not found. And the moment you start, you set a chain reaction in motion that becomes impossible to stop. You are not meant to live small, to stay trapped in the shadows of fear, to settle for a life that doesn't excite your soul. You were designed to evolve, to expand, to become someone who inspires even their past self. Growth isn't about becoming someone new, it's about returning to who you've always been underneath the noise. Strong, capable, infinite. The moment you align your actions with that truth, everything begins to shift. The world may not notice at first, but your energy will. You'll walk differently, speak differently, breathe differently. Because once you realize your worth isn't something to be earned but something to be remembered, you'll never go back to hiding from your own power. When you stop waiting for the world to validate you, you step into a kind of power that no one can take away. The opinions of others begin to lose their weight because your worth is no longer up for debate. You realize that every time you sought approval, you handed over a piece of your strength. But the day you choose self-respect over validation, everything changes. You no longer chase applause, you create impact. You no longer need to be seen. You know who you are. And from that knowing, you start to move differently. You speak with conviction, not because you're certain of every outcome, but because you finally trust your direction. Growth doesn't come wrapped in comfort. It's disguised in discomfort, rejection, and moments of silence when no one claps for you. But those moments are sacred. They're where you learn the truth about yourself, the version that isn't built for approval but for alignment. When everything feels uncertain, that's when your identity is being redefined. Every challenge that breaks your routine is also building your resilience. Every person who leaves is making space for who you're meant to become. You stop seeing loss as punishment and start recognizing it as preparation. There is no weakness in feeling lost. The weakness lies in staying there. The ones who rise aren't those who never fall. They're the ones who learn to stand up quicker every time. The world doesn't need perfection, it needs authenticity. It needs people who have seen darkness and still choose to shine. You become magnetic when your confidence is no longer rooted in your circumstances, but in your character. You stop saying, "I'll be happy when," and start saying, "I'll find peace now, no matter what." That shift is where inner freedom begins. The most powerful transformation happens quietly. When you no longer need to prove, you start to create from purity. You stop performing and start becoming. Your energy changes when your only competition is who you were yesterday. You no longer rush your journey because you understand that real growth isn't linear. It's layered, unpredictable, and beautifully human. Every setback is a hidden teacher. Every delay carries wisdom. And every failure, no matter how painful, refines your direction. Life will always test you. It will strip away illusions and force you to rebuild with truth. But the deeper the pain, the greater the potential for awakening. The moments that break you are not meant to end you, they're meant to expose what's unbreakable within you. You are not defined by what happens to you, but by how you respond to it. Pain is not the enemy, it's the invitation. It invites you to rise beyond the version of yourself that could only exist in comfort. It invites you to embody strength, to see that your scars aren't signs of defeat, but symbols of endurance. And once you truly understand that, fear begins to lose its grip. Because you've seen yourself survive too much to ever doubt your power again. You realize that you don't need guarantees, you just need courage. You don't need certainty, you need faith. Every time you choose courage over comfort, your future expands. Every time you trust the process, life begins to mirror your belief. The journey isn't about reaching perfection. It's about remembering you were never broken to begin with, only becoming more real, more resilient, and more alive with every step forward. Confidence is not something you find, it's something you create every time you choose not to fold under pressure. The people who look unshakable weren't born that way. They simply made a decision to stop negotiating with their fears. Confidence begins the moment you stop asking life to get easier and start getting stronger instead. It's built every time you act with courage despite uncertainty. Every time you face rejection without collapsing. Every time you choose silence over proving your worth. Real power is not loud. It's quiet. It's steady. It's knowing that you no longer need to be chosen to feel complete. When you begin to master your emotions, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is power. It's what separates those who are controlled by their environment from those who control their state. The one who cannot be emotionally manipulated becomes unstoppable. That's what emotional discipline is. It's not suppressing your feelings, it's understanding them deeply, yet refusing to let them dictate your value. When someone tries to get a reaction, and you give them calm, you destroy their control. When they expect you to chase and you give them distance, you reclaim your strength. Emotional control is not detachment. It's direction. It's responding with intention instead of reacting out of insecurity. Every time you stay calm when chaos surrounds you, you rise above the noise. You stop being predictable. You stop being easy to read. And that's when respect begins to replace pity. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. Every time you walk away instead of begging to be understood, you send a message that silence is more powerful than desperation. You no longer compete for validation because you're too focused on elevation.